Hello and welcome everybody to the March the 18th regular legislative committee meeting of the town of Vegreville. I call this meeting to order at 3:03. First up, I'll be looking for a motion to accept the agenda. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, all is in favor. Carried. Next up, the motion to adopt the minutes of our last regular ledge meeting. Councillor Borwa makes the motion. Any errors or omissions within those minutes? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're going to start with some quarterly progress reports from FCSS, and we have Manager Gosling here.
All right, thank you very much. So good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Thank you very much for having me here today. I am looking forward to giving you an overview of what we have accomplished in FCSS in the first quarter of 2025. I'm going to start with new hires. We've had 3 new hires in the first quarter. 2 of them are covering the mat leaves that we have. There's Joanne Dennis, who's covering the community development facilitator position until August of 2025 this year. And then also Tirza Vogt, she is also covering the other community development coordinator position until August as well. So we're happy to have them in the office. Then additionally, we also have Cheryl Swanson. She has joined the the FRN team, and she will be working over there with Yulia at the Family Resource Network. So very happy to have them aboard, and we are very pleased with how quickly they've adapted and contributed to our program. So they hit the ground running as soon as they started, because we had a lot of programs that were starting right away here. So just going over some of the progress that we've had in relation to our FCSS strategic plan in the first quarter. Under information referral, we have updated our community help posters and replacing them in the community. There's been some changes in the provincial government, as you all know, and so as a result of that, we've had to do some updates in our community posters, our help posters. So we have been doing that. Also integrating the community services document to capture the data gaps and barriers in our community, and then with that document, we're hoping to help with future programs, services, and advocacy in our community overall. And what that's going to do is, that's just a portion of our interagency meeting where we sit down, we talk about what the gaps are, and then we actually document it. So then at the year, we have a document that says, this is what all of our agencies reported to be those gaps and barriers in our community. FCSS and the Family Resource Network will be having a table at the spring registration night, so we're inviting folks to come out and learn a little bit more about the programs and services that we offer through FCSS and the FRN. So come out, that's tomorrow night from 5 till 7 o'clock at the social center. Under the education awareness, in this quarter, we have worked with the PCN, Community Navigator, to enhance our community of practice, or as we call it, the COP meetings. And this has led to increasing attendance and collaboration with our community partners. The COP is a 2-part service that we offer, or I guess collaboration that we offer, and it's all about educating the agencies in our community on services or programs, resources that are offered to Vegreville. So we may have somebody to come in and talk about family violence prevention, or we may have somebody to come in, somebody to come in and talk about what services are provided under Alberta Health Services. And then they're educating everybody at the table on that. And then the second part is case management. So if any of the agencies are working with a family or individual and they're needing run or to work collaboratively with the other agencies in the community, then they can bring it to that COP, and then without sharing any names, family names or individual names, they can talk out that scenario or that situation, and agencies can then offer any advice, services, or any referrals or connections. So it's been quite successful in our community to date. During this quarter also, the Vegreville Cares Coalition was approved for the Rural Mental Health Funds, focusing on wellness. They're doing senior nutrition, supporting newcomers, and doing some suicide prevention this year. So we've got quite a few different partners at the table doing that: AHS, Vegreville Drug, Vegmin Society. We also have MHCB and the FRN. So they're all collectively offering these programs in the community as a result of getting this grant. So we're really pleased with that. We also raised awareness during this quarter for the Pink Shirt Day. We did some dementia presentation, and also had Service Canada come out and do a clinic. That was in addition to their every third Thursday of the month. They came out and they were specifically helping individuals with forms, but also setting up their Service Canada accounts. So, the National Volunteer Week planning is underway, and we've applied for funding to host a volunteer appreciation event this spring. We're hoping to be able to provide more information for that in the coming weeks, but as of now, we're just meeting with some volunteers and just getting our plan kind of solidified to be able to announce that to the community. Also during this quarter, we are planning a...
Hi, my name is Anna. The kindest thing that someone has...
I'll let that run. No, I didn't realize there was sound to that too. Also, during this quarter, we are planning the Regional Connect and Learn event for volunteer leaders. If you remember, we did do that last year in the spring. This year, we're waiting until the fall, and that is going to be hosted in Manville. So it's a regional collaboration that we're doing, and we decided that we're going to move it around the region. This year, Manville is going to host it, and it is for leaders of volunteers. In addition to that, we are also in the planning process for a regional poverty simulation that we're planning for November of 2025. And that is, our partners are going to be those regional partners again, so our regional FCSS partners. In addition, we have PCN sitting at the table, and Alberta Health Services are going to be a part of that partnership as well, so we're looking forward to that. Under collective action, we've got, of course, everybody, and I know we've already talked about this, but it did happen this quarter, is the Family Day event. So I do have some stats to share with you on that. We had 18 partners, 14 of them provided activities. We had 488 participants that came through the social center. I do have some other stats here in addition to that. 20 individuals were at the warming station and fire truck. 82 participants took in the FRN family dance. There were over 200 people that came to the bowling alley. The Sunshine Club reported that they had a good turnout, and 90 pounds of food was collected for the food bank, and $1,000 donation, cash donation. So pretty good numbers for the Family Day event. I would say that considering it was cold, it was a cold day, there were a lot of folks that came out and took in the activities and supported the community. So
at the social center, the Sunshine Club had that many people for lunch?
no, sorry, that would be the breakfast, and then any other activities that came in. So the breakfast, I'm not sure exactly how many were the breakfast, but collectively with the face painting and the music that was offered and the pancake breakfast, 488 people went through the social center that morning until the activities ended there.
Because it was just kind of different this year, that when we were done cleaning up, the social center was empty and the Sunshine Club was set up And so we were trying to figure out who was gonna be there to have lunch.
Yeah, this, they've done that,
Yeah, and it
a
seemed
number
like
of years, yeah.
it worked a lot better before, because there was really nothing for them. When we were leaving, we were actually, I think you went over to the rink and announced that if you guys wanted, like, there's music going on here, but it sort of, we cleaned right out. It was,
Teresa said there were actually a few people that hung around in there, mostly because I think it was cold. And it was just an opportunity for people to come in and visit for a bit. But you're right, the majority of people do leave and take in the other activities for the remainder of the day. But you know what? It's interesting because every day, that's VTSS actually that is offering the lunch. It's not the Sunshine Club.
oh,
Yeah, just to be
Okay.
clear.
Okay.
That's the fundraiser is VTSS. I know it's hard because Dwayne Halati wears so many hats.
yeah.
You don't realize sometimes which one he's supporting, but yeah, and he every year says, you know what, it's okay. I'll come out and do this, and no matter how many participants he has, he's willing to come out and do it. So we keep letting him, no matter how many participants.
Well, and again, even the town employees had stacked all the chairs and taken everything away, and there was like 6 tables that Dwayne was sort of counting on, at least for people to eat at if somebody was to come back. So, I mean, they were good. We just said, just probably leave a row of tables.
I think they did, yeah.
They did, because everything was going away, but.
Packing up, yeah. In years past, we've had a couple of activities in there. I think there was a bouncy house one year and stuff, so.
Yeah, the bouncy.
Yeah, but this year, the bouncy house didn't work, so we'll look at that again next year and see.
Okay, well, if there was some people that came back after we left, it's nice to know, because we left an empty house there.
Yeah. That's it. Anyway, thank you to council. I think the breakfast was a great success, and thank you to all our community agencies and nonprofits, because this program or this event wouldn't happen without them. So. Also under the collective action, we continue to support the Pride Committee and the Soaring Project, which connects with, and the Soaring Project, the youth, what they've decided to do this year is they're going to set up a bulletin board in the Lakeland Employment Center. And employers can post any of their employment opportunities or positions on that board, and connecting them with 14 to 24-year-olds. So that's the youth-driven project that they chose through the Soaring, and it's a sustainable project. So I think it's really cool, and I think employers and both youth will like having that board there and to have that connection. So. That's a project that they're working on. We're also working with stakeholders on services for vulnerable individuals and families. And it's going to be an ongoing project that we have. It's going to, right now, we're just in the starting or the planning stages, and that is with anybody in the community that's offering services for vulnerable individuals who are in crisis, families in crisis, having those key stakeholders at the table, and then from there planning a round table to address the gaps and barriers around access to service in our community for those in crisis. So that first meeting has happened. They all agreed, the stakeholders at the table all agreed that we would have a neutral facilitator to come out, so there's no biases from any of the different ministries that are at the table. So I've reached out to Scott Cameron with BASA Innovations. He's the one who did our FCSS strat plan to see if he'd be willing to come out. He's not associated or working for any other ministry at this point, so we'll see what he comes back with, and then I can let you know what next steps are from there. Under course FCSS programs, we've got during this quarter, the Meals on Wheels program has seen a 54% increase over the past 3 years. So we have doubled the number of Meals on Wheels meals that we're delivering out into the community. The volunteer income tax program is in progress, and we've had over 110 income taxes to date that have been dropped off at our FCSS department. We currently have 5 volunteers doing those income tax in our department. FCSS was approved for funding to hire a full-time community counselor, and recruitment is underway for that. So that is a 1-year contract that we have under the Recovery Alberta Ministry, our Mental Health and Addictions, Recovery Alberta. So that is starting, well, it started now, but we're hoping to have somebody in April, as early as April, and then it will run till March 31st of next year with the, there's always an opportunity of extension if there's funds there for that. And just a little update on the Family Resource Network. Programs for children ages 7 to 12 have a waiting list right now. Volunteers have stepped up. We've got parent volunteers that have stepped up to provide supports to various programs. And the FRN Home Visitation Program also has a waiting list. And those referrals go through our FRN hub. So any referrals in the community come into our FRN hub. That's our program that we fund, and then from there they're referred on to the home visitation program. They are currently have a waiting list. I think it's 3-month to wait to get into the home visitation program. And then also we hosted our FRN quarterly network event at Métis Crossings for learning and collaboration. We did that yesterday. It was great. I don't know if anybody's had the opportunity to go to the Métis Crossings. We had a great day of learning and networking out there. We did a tour of all of the land that they have, the animals they have on the land. They call it a nature tour. So we jumped in a couple of SUVs and they took us around the area, and then we did some activities in the afternoon. So a great place to go, and they have the lodge there, so you can go there and have a weekend of learning and wellness, and our group really enjoyed it, so it was great. So just to conclude, this quarter, we've made significant progress during this time, and we are excited to continue with these initiatives in the upcoming months and throughout the year. And certainly, if anybody has any questions, I know I've given you a very brief summary of the programs and services that we are working on just during this quarter. Keep that in mind. So if there's any more information that folks out there want to learn or understand a little bit better in our FCSS department, feel free to give us a call. And that concludes my report.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bullock, start us up.
Thank you, Manager Gosling. The counselor just do this for preventative, the counselor that would be hired, right, for preventative?
Correct. When we applied for this grant, we were looking at short-term solution-based counseling through FCSS. We are early prevention. So that is what we're funded for, is for short, affordable or low fee counseling that's short-term and solution-based. So that usually sits around, between 3 to 12 sessions max. 12 would be max. Like they would have to get approval beyond that, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Councillor.
I've got a couple. One was actually supposed to be my round table thing, but it's an FCSS, so I'm just going to mention to you right
sure.
now. I know years ago you guys used to be the ones who would collect, somebody wanted to put their name forward for volunteering and hours and stuff. Do we still do that collection?
To celebrate volunteers?
No, just like
during
if
National-
somebody's new to town, so this is where it came in, and I was wondering if maybe there's a chance we could do a sign-up sheet. Apparently, there was some groups kind of going around social media that were like newer people that came in and said, hey, how would you know where to volunteer? Because they didn't necessarily know the different social media groups, and they were asking if there's anywhere in town where people are directed to that can go and sign up and say, hey, I might want to be a volunteer, these are the kind of hours that I have, so I thought maybe I'd just pass it to see if that was something we do, or if there is a chance that we could have a sign-up sheet if somebody new was coming in because they'd be coming for the spring event. So that was just something I'd seen, so I just thought I'd throw it your way a bit.
Well, that's, when we did have the Wild Rose funding, we were able to have a volunteer, for anybody who remembers, we had a volunteer
Yeah, okay,
coordinator.
that's one, yeah.
And then over the years, the town of Vegreville approved funding to fund that position. And then that position was cut in 2015, I believe. And since then, FCSS has tried our best to be able to cover some elements of what that coordinator was doing,
Okay.
but not all of it. So we haven't got we don't have a database of volunteer opportunities in the community, and we don't keep a list. So people could come into our office, we would interview them, and then we'd collect information like what they were interested in, and we'd pair them with an organization that was looking for volunteers.
Right.
We also worked with leaders of volunteers on recruitment process. We did help them with job descriptions. We did a lot of that work, but right now, we try our best.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, because that was brought up as somebody saying, like, if I was new to town, I wanted to volunteer, but didn't necessarily know, is there a place that you could just, like, submit a name and say, hey, I might be interested, and other groups could look, but we're not looking for a make-work project where you end up, like, I don't think ever is time that you guys should have to vet them or anything else. To me, if there's a list, someone signs up, it's up to that organization to vet them, because you guys do enough work. You don't need to have more. But yeah, there was just something that got brought up to me, and I was going to throw it in the round table as a, hey, is there a way? So just so you know, there are a few people asking just about that.
and we do that, and people do refer.
Yeah, okay.
Individuals that are new to the community looking for volunteer opportunities,
Still
they
send them your
usually end
way?
up in our office.
Perfect.
And because we have, a good understanding of what nonprofits are available in the community, who's looking for who you hear through interagency or
Yeah.
different sources, who's looking for volunteers, we do give them that information, or a list of nonprofits or charities that have boards. Maybe they want to get involved that way, or so we do.
I'll tell them to keep still keep coming your way.
They can come into our office, and we'll do our best. That's to help them, connect them to
Sure.
the best of our ability with whatever updates we have at that time. So yeah.
Perfect. And then I have one question just on the stuff you given for the crisis response. I know you guys did the first touch where you tried to kind of get them together, find out what everyone's doing, come up with a master sheet. Now that you're going to the facilitator to come in, and it's maybe a little more structured where they're I guess I'm wondering, like, how are we capturing the fact and not taking it on as a role where they think that we are in some way like owning the parts of it? Like, I understood the first meeting that we had was to kind of be like, hey, can everyone tell us who does what, so we're all aware of it? But now if we're actually facilitating with a facilitator that we're bringing in, I want us to be careful that we're not suddenly taking on the role of coordinating emergency services, which we were trying to stay out of coordinating. So, like, how are we navigating that, or I guess expressing that to those groups?
Sure. So in the first meeting, that's exactly what I did, is let them know what our role is, and that is we are just the convener. So we are bringing everybody to the table. Of course, they were all very grateful that we did that, but then at this point, moving forward, they are really leading the meeting. Well, I only made suggestions because I worried that if one ministry took over, that it would take it, they might be a little biased on the direction that the meeting might go based on the programs and services that they offer or what they're doing. But I had said, was very clear that I would find the neutral facilitator, but then it would be a cost share.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so working with facilitator is just a matter of getting that price, find out and sending it back to the group. Are we willing to divide this up? I say we, I'm not sure if FCSS will even be a part of that, maybe, maybe not, because it does help us in the long run to be able to get this figured out. And then they have the clear objectives that we collectively came up with, not FCSS, but collectively came up with that. And moving forward, then that report would be, they would have to provide all the stats and information to the facilitator. So they'll be doing all that with the facilitator, and we're just hosting the second meeting, meaning providing the space and maybe getting the agenda out. So more the administration work, but not.
No, that's great, and that updates it, and like, I think it's very valuable what you guys are doing there. I just know sometimes with groups, what can end up happening is they like to then shift it across and suggest that we're the place you go to originally, and then we facilitate, like, get you out to the right spot. We have to make sure at no time does it just become an FCSS role, that when one of those emergencies come in, that they're now coming to us to direct them out, because that's not what we want to get into. So hopefully these guys take that good role in, because you've given them a lot of help and started them off with something that, quite frankly, I'm disappointed that the groups in themselves didn't get going from inside. So I appreciate the work you're doing.
No,
on
I
that.
think they really
Someone had to.
appreciate it too. And really what's coming out of this and the objectives is creating like a protocol.
Yes.
Creating protocols for crisis, a crisis system. Protocols for our community. And then really highlighting where the gaps in services are and access to service, and then coming up with some sort of report to be able to take to the province or different ministries. I think that the key thing is having those key stakeholders at the table, you know, RCMP, Alberta Health Services, and PCN. We have Alberta Supports there as well, and the hospital, like Covenant Health was there. And so they all getting around the table, having these conversations was quite extraordinary to hear them start the conversation collectively. I don't know if all of them, that group, have ever been in the room together, having these, and they just were sharing stories one after another, how all of us have gone, quite frankly, out of our mandates to be able to support and help people because of those gaps. So we're all in the same boat. It doesn't matter who it is, but then, you know, then you have FCSS over here, like we're not providing crisis, but somehow it ends up at our office, right? Because they're just on that hamster wheel, and then they go off the hamster wheel, come over to us, and then we send them back, and then they go back on that. So we're trying, that's really what, we all know that something has to be done. And this is hopefully the starting point of having those conversations and addressing what those gaps are, identifying the gaps, and then hopefully addressing that with throughout the ministries that are sitting at the table. So, yeah.
Like nobody jumped up and said, hey, that's our responsibility, you guys back off?
No, they didn't.
But again, I think that when the last time we talked about this, what we said is, there's somebody, that gap is being created by somebody dropping the ball. I mean, there had to be somebody, some department that was in charge of this. Somebody has to take responsibility for that gap. It can't be your office.
No, it's not.
Can't be the
our office.
hospital.
No. So that's why we're taking the lead as a community developer, like being the community development portion of this, bringing all of those people to the table and saying, okay, now you figure out moving forward where those gaps are and how we're going to address it, and perhaps coming up with, you know, a roadmap of a plan for how we're going to move forward. Because even if these services do not exist, or there's no plan of them existing in our community, what is the plan? How are we going to get people connected to the services they need? That's what we need. We need a plan. We need a collective protocol, procedure, whatever it is, to be able to get people connected. And we all have to be on the same page. So there was even conversations at that table about what is vulnerable? How are we defining vulnerable? How are we defining someone in crisis? You know, what is the definition of emergent care and non-emergent care? So we just collectively being around that table is really interesting to say, I think we all just need to get on the same page and have the same definition of what these terms really mean to all of us across ministry. And we've already done that with a lot of our agencies in our community. We're just going to mimic something like that with those different organizations, government agencies that are providing services to vulnerable individuals in crisis. So,
Go ahead, Councilor Curtis.
Thank you very much. Happy to hear that you guys had that first meeting. I'm wondering, potentially inviting somebody from council to the next one, or even our MLA, to hear what all the groups in town are thinking.
do you want me to ask them? Because I'm letting them take the lead. Like them, when I say them, I mean those agencies that are guiding these next steps, or do you or I can ask them.
Yeah, I think it would be nice. I think maybe if somebody from council was there, any one of us or anybody that was available.
It's a very important place for our MLA to be in those conversations too.
I think
Sure.
that would, because they're doing the whole AHS refocus and the new pillars, and this might shed some light on whose pillar it is now, or what branch of the pillar takes care of this, or this is available in Edmonton, but it's not available here, so how do we get on the same road? And I've been saying it the whole time, where's my flow chart? I like my flow chart. This is a scenario, this is where we go. So I think it's great. Protocol, flow chart, same kind of thing.
So you want to be part of that, the meeting,
I would think that it would be good for one
like
of
the
us to be
workshop.
there. Yeah.
the round table that's coming up with the protocols.
I think so. I think whenever they're having it, if we could get some heads up, and if they're, obviously, this was our directive to get it started anyway, so,
I will bring that forward to them.
awesome. And then, and I would bring up the MLA too, if they can reach out to her office and
Yeah.
notify, or any kind of meeting minutes or notes that come out of it can be forwarded off as well.
Okay.
I think would be good to put on her desk, so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
These are not the concerns that the municipality can solve. We have no tools to solve these. And we appreciate what your office has taken on and trying to collaborate, bring everybody together and let them trying to figure out who's gonna be in charge,
Yeah.
what they're gonna do.
Yeah. And our outcomes are always about how we can get back to stay in our lane and get back to offering those services to individuals who are in that early intervention early prevention stage of service delivery. So, yeah.
Like the part where, stepping back, bring them all to the room and let's figure out who's in charge.
Yeah, I repeated myself often saying what our role was moving forward, so. Yeah.
Just one thing. If because I know you have to bring it to them, I guess one of the things that I would say is like in our ask to suggest like maybe to bring somebody in, just so that they understand that like the reason for is because once they come up with a flow chart and a gap, it's not that if you're sitting around the table planning it out, we're going to input into it, because we're not going to input because we have zero to do with it. But what we would be there is to hear those gaps, to hear the spots, because then our role after that is going to be maybe taking that and advocating to the province and saying, we sat and watched a bunch of your departments try really hard to come up with a flow chart and they found it impossible, or they found these gaps, because ours is going to be that advocacy piece. Like, I don't think if they're concerned about, I can see where maybe they'd have a concern about, say, bringing the MLA at this point, especially if it's, with different departments. But I guess our part would be like to sit back there and hear for ourselves the gaps, because in a round table, like I wouldn't be making suggestions to them because it's not ours.
No, exactly. And I don't think they would fear that the town would then be a part of the protocol and playing a part or anything. And it's been very clear that even FCSS wouldn't play a part in that. It's just a matter of maybe we're just information referral, which is exactly who we are, right? Where they can then call our office to learn more about other services that are offered in the community. But yeah, certainly I'll make sure that's part of the email. I'm just waiting for the facilitator to get back to me on just an outline of what they think will work for this group, like for facilitation and a fee. And then in that, I'll also add in that town councilors would like to attend.
Well, I don't think we all need to attend. I think one or two.
Or one, yeah.
One, just to hold, somebody needs to be accountable.
I did suggest that, just so you know, to them. That's why I asked. That's why I just suggested maybe to talking to them, because they're like, I don't know at this point, but I will bring it up again.
Well, at some point, we know how government organizations usually work, because the people in crisis in our community, it's like a ball being tossed around right now. But eventually, somebody's going to have to take accountability for it.
I think it's a collective.
Good. Then we hold them all to it.
Yeah.
Because it's not working
I don't think it's
with
one.
nobody taking that role on.
Yeah. And yeah, that's something that we talked about in that meeting too, that I don't think it's one ministry or one agency. I think everybody out there is working really hard to serve our community. It's just that we need to have a plan. We need to have a system in place. We need to understand who's doing what and what referral processes look like, where we refer, and then of course, if there's a giant gap, that really isn't anybody's fault. Like at a ministry level, yeah, we have to have that conversation, but.
Well, it's probably not the Minister of Infrastructure's problem, right?
No,
Like, we can agree to that,
yes.
okay? And there's probably some other ministries we can take away from that list, that they can't be accountable for the gaps. But we can probably bring 3 ministries in
Yes.
that are accountable for the gap in our community. And somehow they have to be held accountable. And somehow they have to learn to work together to fill that gap.
And that's why we're having this meeting.
So they probably don't want a council or the MLA there right now, probably not. I wouldn't imagine they wouldn't.
They didn't say no, they just said it,
Premature.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and that's fine. If it's 2 meetings later, if they feel better, like I'd rather show what we've done and what we've come up with before. That's totally fine. But at some point, just wanting to get in there and ensuring that they're taking those scenarios. Like if Group A said this has happened to us and we couldn't do anything, then that one goes up on the board. Okay, what do we do in this scenario? And who's been given to us before? What issues been given to us that we don't do? Slap it on the board, and then that roadmap starts to form, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're planning on doing, is having scenarios, real scenarios in our community and walking through them with having every single agency in that community. I want to add also that the poverty simulation that we're planning on having in our community in November is exactly that. It is giving you an opportunity to sit during a morning and there's 100 different scenarios of families that are vulnerable families in crisis or individuals. And it walks you through a week in the life of somebody who's in poverty. And it is one of the most impactful workshops you'll ever go through. And then at the end, we have a debrief and talk about our communities and relate some of those scenarios. And it's all about, and it has a lot to do with accessing services in our community. That poverty simulation is about how long it takes for somebody to receive their benefits at Alberta Supports. And then it has, you know, a scenario about somebody who is going to the doctor's office and they can't get, you know, whatever services they need there. And it just, the whole outside of the facility or the scenario that they're trying to create, the whole outside of it is all the government agencies and different organizations. And then you walk through that over the course of an hour, and an hour represents 1 week in the life of poverty. So in November, we're hoping that when our new elected officials come in, then they will, part of the orientation, plan to be a part of this poverty simulation. And again, that's a regional event that we're planning. So that's not just elected officials in Vegreville, but it's also Tofield, Lamont, Manville. We invited Two Hills. I'm not sure if they'll be there. And then Viking as well. So then if even half of those elected officials from those communities come and collectively have that conversation about poverty in rural Alberta, that's going to be quite impactful overall for our region to have that regional discussion. So,
Okay, Councillor Berry, then that'll be it for the comments on this.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I was just wanting to say thank you very much for the information.
you bet.
It's been a very good discussion. I know we sit on a lot of different committees and we attend different things and we get lots of questions. I keep having the feeling that we've got a disconnect. And I was looking at, Councillor Curtis is absolutely right, something with a flow chart or a Q&A, a public pamphlet. Because even when somebody comes into an emergency at a later time of the evening, somebody needs to be able to say, what's the problem? Oh, you should be able to go to, and direct them to the right place instead of them leaving and being totally disappointed because they didn't get any service. And I think that's a disconnect that we have where A doesn't know what B is doing. And so to get that good, I really think that the flow chart and the public pamphlets, even so that people out there understand a little more as to just what is available, but what's the right place to go at the right time.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's one of the problems we've gone. So I really appreciate what you've got started here, and I hope we can keep it going. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Manager Gosling? Well, thank you very much for the quarterly report. And maybe we'll set out the first couple meetings with this new group until they can get some direction. Thank you. Next up, Manager Newton.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the things I wanted to bring up that's off topic right away is just to let you know an enforcement update that the derelict home just on 49th Avenue down the street from us has been demolished, and they're finishing up the finishing touches there today.
Drove by it a couple of times, right behind Lorianne Coho's office.
Yeah.
That little red one is gone. Just before you get started, I brought something up with CL Ling today on some other derelict properties that their people have moved into. So our municipal enforcement does not have the right to go into a derelict house to see if anybody's living in there. Is that what the rule is, sir?
Yes, Your Worship, that is correct. They just don't have the authority to enter a private dwelling without warrant, for one, or two, that the owner has contacted us directly. But in most cases, the Trespass to Premises Act refers to businesses in that case.
Okay, but if the owner of the property has contacted the police and nothing's happened, if they contacted our municipal enforcement, is there any way that we could go and check on a derelict property?
We can definitely do an inspection, but we wouldn't enter the property at all.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have today here the amending of
MOS 2008 body worn camera policy. In March of 2024, Town Council approved the body worn camera policy to allow municipal enforcement officers to utilize body worn cameras during the course of their duties. A recent incident involving a Vegreville Fire Service member proved the need to modify the policy to allow fire service members to use the body worn cameras when they may be responding to incidents alone and or documenting a fire emergency scene. Administration is presenting a draft policy with the following changes for council's consideration. Adding the definition for fire service member, revising the policy statement, scope, responsibilities, recordings, exceptions to recordings, storage of media, and retention of sections to include fire service members, and adding a new section for use of body camera specific to fire service members. While the policy states that officers will be responsible for inspecting their BWC and uploading recorded information to the database, administration recommends that the fire service member BWC will be inspected weekly by the fire chief, and the fire chief will be responsible for ensuring all recorded information is uploaded to the appropriate database. The proposed policy has been reviewed by senior management and senior members of Vegreville Fire Services. Administration has provided Town Council with a current policy for cross-referencing purposes. In order to implement this policy, Vegreville Fire Services will purchase a new body camera and external hard drive at a cost of $300, and this will be purchased from the Fire Services equipment budget, so no large impact. Our communication strategy, Your Worship, is upon adoption of this policy, Vegreville Fire Service members will be informed of the policy approval, and all members will be taught how to use the BWC in accordance with MOS 2008. The fire chief will be instructed on how and when to inspect the BWC and how to upload the required information to the database. Your options today, Your Worship, is the Town Council accepts the proposed amendments to MOS 2008 body worn camera policy to include fire service members at the next council meeting. Number two, the Town Council review and discuss the draft policy at the next legislative committee meeting, or the Town Council rejects the proposed amendments, allowing only municipal enforcement officers to continue the use of the body worn cameras.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Okay. Manager Newton, some of the questions I would have, how many incidents did the fire services have that this camera would have been, that you're recommending for? How many incidents did they have in the past year?
Altogether, it was one significant incident that a member should have that capability of recording if required. Incident-wise, we had over 200 incidents last year, but that might not necessarily needed the body cam, but it's a tool for our officers to use or our members to use while they are alone.
Okay, another question I have is how many cameras then would you require?
Only one. The only time that a member is without another person is in our fire command vehicle, and that vehicle goes out on a regular basis to alarm calls, for example, that they may not require a full complement of firefighters.
So you would say that it would be basically for the firefighter that is taking the emergency call on their own, like
That's correct, Your Worship.
it's either the chief or the deputy chief that falls to that role?
During the day, the fire chief has that role, and then throughout the evening and the weekends, that could fall onto any number of members. But it's a rotating basis, and we would keep the body cam in the vehicle that would respond during that time.
Okay. Any other questions? Is everybody okay with option one here?
Yep.
Okay, we'll pick option one. Thank you very much. Oh, we got one more request for asset disposal.
Yes, Your Worship, that's me again. This is the disposal asset of unit number 98, referred to as Car 2. It's our emergency response vehicle. Over the course of a busy wildfire season, administration identified that additional attack apparatus with the capacity of water would be beneficial for the Vegreville Fire Services. Administration explored options of repurposing vehicles, trailers, and water skids from other town of Vegreville departments, but unfortunately it was determined these options were not adequate for fire service needs. Subsequently, Protective Services has successfully acquired a suitable water skid via donation from Global Medic and a new vehicle donated by Enbridge. The new vehicle, known as Rapid 2, will be able to hold the water skid and will be a crucial asset come wildfire season. Unit number 98 will no longer be needed for the Fire Services Department. The department wishes to dispose of Unit 98 by means council sees fit and use funds obtained through the sale to complete the retrofit of Rapid 2. The following options of disposal are available for council's consideration: sealed bid, auction, sale by vendor, for example, Rocky Mountain Phoenix, posting on our Alberta Fire Chiefs Association marketplace, or other means recommended by council. Unit 98 can be sold for between $8,000 without emergency equipment affixed to $10,000 with emergency equipment affixed. If the town opts to sell the vehicle with the emergency equipment affixed, some of the emergency lights will be repurposed to Rapid 2. Unit 98 was purchased in 2009 for $78,798.38. This asset is funded by the town of Vegreville and is not shared with the county of Minburn. It is fully depreciated, therefore all proceeds will be a gain on the sale and can be used to retrofit Rapid 2. Proceeds will be used for additional lighting, deckling, and radio equipment repurposing. Our communication strategy, the City Manager team will be made aware of council decision and monitor project progress. Options today, Your Worship, are the Town Council approves the full disposal of Unit 98, including affixed emergency equipment, and use proceeds from sale for emergency lights, deckling, and radio equipment repurposing by means determined by council. 2, that Town Council approves the disposal of Unit 98, excluding affixed emergency equipment, and use proceeds from sale for additional lights, deckling, and radio equipment repurposing by means determined by council. 3, Town Council rejects the proposal to dispose Unit 98, and administration will retain Unit 98 and purchase all new emergency equipment through other sources. Or 4, Town Council rejects all options and recommends alternative options to administration.
Okay, any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Okay, Manager Newton, so one of the things that I look at here is that we'll start with the one thing I don't like already is disposal of the equipment, whether it's that truck or any piece of equipment in the town of Vegreville. I don't ever want to see this, in my opinion, I never want to see sealed bid ever come across this desk or across this computer again. I think there's better ways to dispose of it. By auction is probably the best one, and by a reputable auction. Secondly, my feeling is anytime there's a piece of equipment disposed of, or whatever disposed of by the town, I think that money should go straight into reserve. That's what I think, because then we could determine in the next budget what we're going to be spending the money on. So not that I object that what you're wanting to do with it is a good intent. I think it's good intent. It's just I think if we're disposing equipment, it needs to go to a reserve to where it's needed so we can distribute the money adequately when it's needed at next budget. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things. I'll go first of all. Do we not have a town policy on disposal of equipment and where the proceeds go?
Thank you, Councillor Barry. We have a TCA policy which has been followed, but it hasn't been formally adopted by council. It's not on official Town of Vegreville policy documentation. So the policy itself says that assets will be disposed of in lieu of council's wishes. So every time we have brought an asset disposal forward, it's always been an RCD to council, and then council decides what the wishes are for that particular item. So we don't actually have a formal policy, similar to the land sale policy where it's we do this, this, and this. The assets we have to bring to council every time.
Okay, and proceeds, is there latitude as to where the proceeds have to be?
There is no indication of where proceeds need to go. So that is
And
all.
I'll come back to Manager Newton. In terms of whether the equipment is on or removed, what's the more interest in potential buyers out there? If it's a complete unit with everything attached, is that of more interest for the type of people that might be interested in buying this rather than removing all the emergency?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So I can't guarantee on who would buy it through the options there, right? Potentially another emergency services have the option of purchasing that vehicle with the lighting all together. But I haven't seen many disposals for command apparatus in quite some time. Every once in a while, there are agencies that use the Alberta Fire Chiefs Association to dispose of their SUVs, for example. Not necessarily the larger trucks, right? The larger trucks usually go through the auction process because they have different bids for that, right? But I have seen in the recent past, Lloydminster, for example, sold 2 vehicles from their. I shouldn't say that they advertised 2 vehicles there. I'm not sure if they were sold through there or not, but it's an option that they have. It all depends, if the sealed bid or whatever option we choose today is through a non-emergency services, then I would not feel comfortable selling the lighting with that as well. It's different in our case because it's not red and blue. It's not a police service vehicle, right? So there is no potential of anybody having that capability, but it still is considered an emergency vehicle, and I would prefer to sell it to another emergency department as is.
Manager Newton, what is the vehicle? What is it?
It's a 2009 Chevy Tahoe. That Tahoe was purchased originally for the ambulance service, and that Tahoe was returned back to the fire service once the ambulance service left the community, and we've been using it as an administration vehicle ever since.
Okay. So we can't make a decision here today. So, go ahead.
Since you asked that question, just ask me now, how many kilometers are on that vehicle?
Unfortunately, Councillor Bullock, I don't have that in the back of my mind. I believe the last time I looked, it was about 147,000 kilometers.
Okay, definitely a good auction piece.
Yep, just the way it says.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I should have asked this before. For roughly $8,000 to $10,000, do you believe that would be enough to cover everything that would be needed for the new unit?
Unfortunately, I don't have the finished quotes yet. I have been in communication with our vehicle outfitters, judging by the new tariffs that are coming and the fact that the equipment does come from the United States, plus shop labor and everything. I'm going to guess it actually will end up being more than $10,000, but we do have money in our equipment budget that we could use on top of that. But that would be a minimal amount to our bottom line, but I'm waiting to find out for sure what those costs are going to be.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would imagine we're gonna run this through an auction, and, but we can't make that decision until Monday night's meeting, and probably you send it dressed the way it is, it'll probably do very well like that. And we are gonna have a conversation about the way that we're purchasing things. I would imagine there's some lights and stuff that can be purchased in Canada. Not all emergency lighting comes from the United States. As a matter of fact, do we have any orders going in for large purchases, like garbage trucks? I know we have a fire truck that's on order right now, and we probably can't back out of that one. But is there any other equipment that we are gonna be ordering right away, Dale?
All of our equipment for 2025 for heavy equipment has already been purchased. I mean, the POs are out, prices are locked, and now we wait for their arrival. So we got on it right away, knowing that times were changing very quick. So we got all our orders in before the tariff thing started.
Okay, we're gonna have a conversation fairly quickly about our procurement of services, tender process, and anything that we're buying that we will be buying Canadian. And we will not be ordering anything from the United States here in the near future, that's for sure. So we'll make a motion on Monday's meeting, and we'll get that thing off to the auction. Okay, thank you very much. Where's it? Didn't know that very good, did I? Who's up next, Tina?
Who's reading the?
Oh, something just went wrong.
Oh, did it shut down? Oh, it's this one right here. Sorry. Letter from.
Oh, so, Community Engagement Economic Development Manager, Jameson Brown.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I have here a piece of good news in terms of correspondence from the Honorable R.J. Segerson, Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation. Dear Jameson Brown, I'm pleased to confirm that I have approved the grant funding of $90,000 to the town of Vegreville. This funding will support the Vegreville Wayfinding Signage Master Plan Implementation Project. The funding will be provided in accordance with the Ministerial Grants Regulation following execution of a funding agreement between the town of Vegreville and Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation. For further details on arranging the funding agreement, please see Scott Long, Executive Director, Rural Economic Development Branch at redacted. Best wishes for the successful completion of this project. Sincerely, Honorable R.J. Segerson, Minister, Agriculture and Irrigation. And while it's not specifically noted in this letter, this would be for the Small Community Opportunities Program, otherwise known as the SCOP grant. And the for your reference, the $90,000 is the maximum amount that you can get from that grant.
I just never seen it coming from agriculture, but that's good.
The background on the grant is this was specifically only for rural communities. You had to live at least 100 kilometers away from a major urban center. So I believe that maybe there's the tie-in with the rural setting and the agriculture, but the fact that agriculture irrigation also has a rural economic development branch that I'm not sure how long has been in play, but this is the second year in a row that we have received the SCOP funding, so it's good news.
Good job.
Okay, so we have already some money set aside for wayfinding. How much do we have left of that?
So we had budgeted in 2025 $150,000 for wayfinding. So this $90,000 obviously elevates that to $240,000, and the wayfinding plan was always going to be a 3-phase plan because there's just a lot of signs. So this will take a serious chunk out of phase 2 and hopefully potentially get us to the point where maybe it's smaller increments throughout the next few years to kind of complete the process of all of the little. You start doing a mental asset assessment of all the signs in this community. If we can get a real big chunk done here in year one, it makes the project more palatable moving forward and just kind of identifying key signage and key areas and focusing on smaller projects as we move forward.
But the 125 was collected in 2022 budget?
No, so $75,000 was allocated in 2024 for this project. And it was the recommendation upon realizing that we were not going to get grant funding from a different stream last year, perhaps it would be best to pause any spending in 2024 with that $75,000 and make a bigger splash by asking for another $75,000 for a total of $150,000 in 2025.
Then you got the 19.
Okay. So, do you have a plan?
Yes, we absolutely have a plan. This has been discussed with senior management. So, given the scope and the size of the project, specifically the dollar amount, it is something that would have to be put through. And you have to forgive me, my private sector is still showing here. What's the name of the process? An RFP, thank you very much. An RFP through Alberta Purchasing Connection to ensure it's going through the right process. At which point, the plan is already intact, right? This was done a few years ago with Cygnus Wayfinding. So now it's about taking what they've designed, taking what they've identified in terms of where these signs should go, and putting into action. Essentially, taking the plan that's in place and literally putting the signs in the ground.
And because it's over a certain amount of money is why we need to do this?
Correct.
If we broke it into 2 smaller projects for this year, will we have to go through that same process?
That is a question that is above my pay grade, Your Worship.
I just know when we go through this process that it usually costs a lot more. Once anybody is quoting the municipality on when we get into doing this process, it comes out to a lot more money. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And as a municipality, we don't grind on anybody, like if you were purchasing it for your garage at home.
We should start.
Yeah, I know. So, I don't know what what is the dollar factor that you gotta be over, 125,000? It's 200?
It's 200,000, yes. And,
Okay.
So if we could break it into separate projects, but it would have to be like, okay, for the sign design and creation,
I thought we already had the design.
well, like the actual sign creation, we could do. And then the following year, because you can't hit the 200,000 mark in a year. The following year would be the installation.
If we had the signs as one project, and then have somebody to install poles as a different project, I mean, maybe somebody locally could do the post.
It's something we can look into, yes.
Okay, well, I don't know if you're hearing what I'm saying, but we've talked about this a few times, that we don't feel that we're really getting the best bang for our buck. Really, and municipalities, for some reason, pay a lot more than anybody in the private sector. And we really gotta approach these things in a different way. And if we can, break this into a sign and somebody installing post, we wouldn't have to go that route, and we may be able to find somebody locally that could do the post, and then we could have them, that the signs would bolt right onto them. So, I'm not trying to embarrass anybody here, but if nobody in our administration has noticed that what it ends up costing a municipality when a job is done compared to the private sector is a lot more money. And it's just because of the way the process itself works. When somebody, a contractor or somebody's bidding on a job, they charge us more. So we have limited funds to work with. We would like to get as much done in this project as we can. So if we can be a little creative, thinking outside the box on this project, we might be able to get a little more done.
Okay.
And so we have 75,000 that we've put aside already. We received 90. So we have $165,000.
No, we have $150,000 set aside. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
the 90,000 takes us up to 240,000 for the project.
I'm sure we can get this thing done.
Okay. Administration will go back to the drawing board and see what we can accomplish here.
Okay?
Excellent.
We appreciate that. And thanks for the good news, Jameson. That's very nice. I will, next time we see RJ, I will be, did not see it coming from ag and irrigation, not immigration, but irrigation. Yeah.
That's how I read it the first time. I'm like, what is going on?
Okay, next up, Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today's topic is subdivision application 25 TOW-001 lot block A plan 7620421. The proposal is to review subdivision application 25 TOW-001 and approve the process to proceed. On March 17th, 2025, Planning and Development created an application for a subdivision approval to subdivide 3.5 acres out of a 147-acre parcel of town-owned land listed in the Municipal Development Plan as Urban Reserve. The lot, Block A, Plan 7620421. Communication strategy is once approved to proceed with the process, the subdivision authority officer will, as per the Municipal Government Act, send notification of a subdivision application to the government departments, persons, local authorities as required by the subdivision and development regulations, the adjacent landowners, and post on the town's website and social media. The options are that the town council review the subdivision application and approve the process to proceed, or option two is the town council can deny the request.
Okay, so the application says 3 acres, and this says 3.5. But 3 acres is what we're wanting to subdivide.
Yes, 3 acres.
Okay.
I'll just go to the next one.
Okay, any comments? But it is 3 acres that we want to subdivide out of that large piece.
This will come up for approval. And I'm getting told it's 3.5 is what it needs, because it could be the property of 3, and then we have to make room for the road allowance. Or we can go 3, and they fit the road allowance in that 3 acres.
It was 3 all day long. The conversation never went to 3.5.
That's what, well, then it'll be 3, and they can fit the road allowance within that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any comments? Okay. And then once this process is done, then it can get an address?
The process would be addresses after the subdivision is complete, and we have that information, then we can go to Canada Post and give it civic addresses. As soon as the subdivision is complete and gone to land titles, it'll get legal land locations, but the municipal civics come after that.
Okay. Okay, so there's no other comments on that. We'll see that on Monday night. Okay. Next up, Director Saskew.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have here a letter from Joe and Karen Billick of Billick Holdings Limited, request for tax relief. I feel like this is very echoey today. Dear Town of Vegreville Mayor and Council, we are writing this letter to request tax relief on our building located at 5125 52nd Ave, tax roll 336500. We purchased this building last year and have offered to rent part of the building to the Vegreville Food Bank. We are happy that sometime in May 2025, the food bank will be moving to the newly renovated space. We have made significant improvements and changes to the space to accommodate their needs as much as possible. They will be using approximately 50% of the building and are asking for a reduction in our property taxes of 50%. We have chosen to provide this space to help the community in which we have been so blessed and to have been successful in, and want to give back. Karen and I are not making anything on this arrangement. We are charging the food bank their cost of utilities and taxes and will pass on the property tax reduction directly to them. This savings of thousands of dollars annually can go towards food purchases to help vulnerable people in our community. Joe and Karen Billick of Billick Holdings Limited.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have the ability to give tax relief to nonprofits, correct?
That is correct.
This is a little different.
Yes.
So I'll give a little bit of the history here for everybody. Last year, the flood at the church and the food bank had to move. So Brian and Marie Barron were kind enough in a pinch to let them into a building that they use for storage. Was a little awkward in there and stuff with the way it was set up. So since then, Joe and Karen have the building right next door, and they have done a lot of renovations in there to make sure that everything goes in one door, and it's just a steady flow. And they put up walls where the freezers go, and they have spent a lot of time. And I had a conversation with Mr. Billick, and our community has really stepped up here. A lot of people have donated the supplies and cut their labor in half. And I mean, I'm sure that when this is all done, that Joe and Karen are going to put something in the paper thanking all the businesses that have supported this worthwhile effort. So, and the fact that he's charging half the utilities and half the taxes, so whatever we offer in relief and taxes to help support this nonprofit will go directly to them. So they're asking for 50% off of their taxes, which will be 50% that will not be charged to the food bank. And this is, I know it's a 5-year lease is what they're signing right now. So does anybody have any comments, or should we look for a direction first? Is this something that we can do?
Yeah, this is something that we can do for this year. There is an application for not-for-profits to be able to have tax relief, and then actually 50% of Joe and Karen's property would be noted as exempt for purposes of the tax roll. As we are well aware, February was the deadline for the assessors to get in all the assessments for this upcoming May tax assessment that we're doing. So we could grant this for this year, and then next September, October is when they have to submit their application for tax exemption. They could do that for the years following. So this year we would have to bring it through general reserve to fund the tax abatement that we were giving them, and then in the following years they can actually submit application and have that actual portion of their property as tax exempt, and it wouldn't even be built into our tax rate that we are levying in 2026.
Okay. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Warlock.
Can you, I know that it could change based upon, but could you give us a rough idea of what 50% would be? I understand fully it could change based upon assessments and whatnot.
It's really hard because, like you said, if they did a lot of renovations there,
Well, what they did is they've moved some half walls and built some walls in there. They're pouring a big cement ramp, which Twin Lakes is donating all the cement for, and you know, Bucky's Welding. I mean, everybody in the community that could went over there. I know the flooring company, Budget Floors, they just charged what the cost of the material was, and everybody in this community has really been helping out in this project, so.
okay, well, approximately for the total tax bill would be $5,000 annually, so $2,500 would be.
So that was kind of the point that I was thinking, like, we have other groups that, and I understand we can do this quite simply and easily through that exemption, but we do have other groups that we give grants to, for example, like Prairie Tales, because we see the service that they're giving. I would say that it's very easily explainable and justified to suggest that we would help as well on something like the food bank. And this is quite a small amount when you really take that into consideration. So I don't have an issue with however administratively it has to happen.
Okay, Councillor Bullock.
Well, another thing is about Billix and their support of this community over the years has far surpassed $2,500 in a year per year for what they do for this community. So I think it's a great thing they're doing for the food bank and with everybody else. And I don't know how many people know, but I'm sure a lot do realize how much they have supported nonprofits in this town for years and years. So.
Thank you, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Worship. I'd definitely be in favor of making sure we can do this, and I'm also curious as to if there's any other way that they could apply, if they put up a sign, if any of their renovations in the front, would any of this qualify for any of the other incentives that we have? Because I think that what they've done there and what the community is doing for the food bank, and we know right now the food bank is extremely important to the community and to a lot of people in it. So I'm very, very pleased with what they've been doing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much. Also in favor, and excited to see what it looks like when we do our food bank runs on council, so.
Yeah, it should be a little easier on loading and backing straight up
It's
there.
a little hard here.
Yeah, and then everybody, stuff being passed in and out on the old one, this one will go in one door.
Yeah.
And it'll just be, it'd be a real nice flow to it. Joe sort of drew me a picture of how they got it all laid out there. And again, it's been a community project, so.
Yeah, well done by everybody.
Yeah. Yep. And again, I want to thank, Brian and Marie Barron too for stepping up when they were in crisis there. And okay, so we'll see this on Monday? Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, CAO Ling.
Okay, thank you, your worship. Next up is a letter from the Honorable Mike Ellis, Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services. The letter is addressed to me. It says, "Dear Miss Ling, I'm in receipt of your January 24th, 2025 email to my colleague, the Honorable Mickey Amory, Minister of Justice, regarding a request to establish a joint policing committee for Vegreville and Mundare. Your email was forwarded to the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services for a response. As the minister responsible for policing and police governance in the province, I am pleased to respond and provide you with the following information. I appreciate you taking your time to write in connection with the establishment of a joint municipal policing committee for the towns of Vegreville and Mundare. I understand your councils feel that a joint municipal committee would better suit the specific needs of both communities and foster closer collaboration between local authorities, law enforcement, and residents. As you are no doubt aware, Alberta's government-enhanced policing governance is a priority by passing the Police Amendment Act in December 2022. The measures in the Act give municipalities policed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police a voice in setting local and province-wide policing priorities and goals by creating joint municipal and regional policing committees, as well as establishing a permanent provincial police advisory board. The Police Amendment Act and Police Governance Ministerial Regulation supports that only municipalities with a population over 5,000 that hold municipal police service agreements may form part of a joint municipal policing committee. Given that Mundare has a population of 792 and is policed by the Provincial Police Service, the town is not eligible to form part of a joint municipal policing committee. The town of Mundare is represented by the Provincial Police Advisory Board. For the municipality of Vegreville specifically, the town can either remain part of the Eastern Alberta Regional Policing Committee or opt to form its own municipal policing committee with my approval. To facilitate collaboration between the two communities, an informal option could be considered. The two communities could come together on their own or with other neighboring communities to collaborate on matters concerning policing and public safety via an informal regional police advisory committee. These local advisory committees, together with their local detachments, have been operating successfully for many years. Although these informal groupings are not recognized under the Police Amendment Act, they serve as important community-led solutions that could help meet the specific objections of both communities and perhaps other neighboring communities. Thank you for everything you continue to do to help keep Alberta's communities safe and secure, and for your commitment and excellence in civil governance. I look forward to hearing further with respect to how the town of Vegreville wishes to approach police governance, considering the information provided here, and I also look forward to continuing our strong working relationship. Sincerely, the Honourable Mike Ells, Deputy Premier of Alberta, Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services. And just to let council know that on March 13th, we resent a letter to Minister Ellis requesting permission for Vegreville, the town of Vegreville, to form its own municipal police committee.
So, thank you. Has everybody read the document that Sandra sent out to us regarding this? So, we can either remain part of the Eastern Alberta Regional Policing Committee, where we may not even have any representation on the board because we could put a name forward, but then the province will be putting their own people on there, or, like we asked to last time, is just stay on our own. This board will not be all made up of town council. It'll be other people from the community or even appointments from the province. Everybody still okay with the direction of going forward with this on our own? Okay. That was a long read today. Like, it got boring at times, and it was like just redundant over and over again. Go ahead.
And with all due respect to Minister Ellis, I don't agree with even the letter he just sent us. I mean, for him to state that they've worked together for years successfully, if that was true, we wouldn't be changing the model. If everything was hunky-dory and all of our information was going forward to the right departments, we wouldn't be creating these boards. And also, unfortunately, the suggestion to partner up with another group over 5,000 concerns me a little bit, that we don't understand how the distribution of population seems to work in most of our communities, because we don't have a lot of 5,000 communities that are side by side, unless they want to stick with like Shore Park and Mill Woods, which sometimes the province forgets are, you know, Edmonton, Calgary-based places aren't the only places out there. So certainly I appreciate the work you guys did, and I think that we have been known to lead things anyways on our own, and we would have the ability to even appoint partners. So I don't think this has to exclude Mundare. They may not be part of a joint board, but they could certainly be part of our board if that's something we so wished. But I think that we've proven that the only way we're going to have a voice is if we control our voice.
Go ahead, Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much. I do find it mildly hilarious myself that they're allowing you to create your own, but it doesn't count. You know, I don't understand. And are we going to be allowed to bring Mundare onto our board, or will that negate it if they find out that we bring Mundare into our sole board after stating that we couldn't collaborate in the first place?
It's a little confusing because when they first brought this out, the talk was that, because we investigated this, and we were told that Mundare could join a joint municipal policing committee with us. However, they could not opt out of the provincial side. So they would be on two, which would be fine. And then when we received the letter from Minister Ellis, that is no longer an option. So I think we will wait to hear what Minister Ellis says, and if we are allowed to form our own board, then we will hopefully by then have solid information out of the department ministry to let us know what who has to be sitting on the board. Because at this point now, our understanding is it's quite possible, however we write the bylaw, if the minister approves the bylaw, that's who we can have on the board. So until we hear back and we really start the process, then we'll discover some more things.
Well, and again, this provincial police advisory board that is going to be representing the town of Mundare. The town of Mundare and the county of Minburn may not have one representative
Right.
on that. So again, I mean, the fact that they're saying that we could go on our own or we could stay with the northeast or the eastern, so we may not even have any representation if we were to stay on that. And the Eastern Alberta Police Advisory Board is a big board.
There's 26 detachments in the in that northeast area. So I'm guessing that they would, not even sure they'd have a representative from each detachment available.
Right.
So what is the numbers that we'd be looking at for this board if we were on our own? Do we know that yet?
Isn't it? Yeah, minimum of 3 and a maximum of 7.
So we've never talked about this, how we'd like to be represented on that board, and then our bylaws will state how often we meet.
Yes. Yeah, and the bylaws will also state what the cost is to run this board, and that the funds will be coming out of the town of Vegreville.
Well, they did say that we could use some of the the offset money that we get from that $72 million grant from the government to fund this board.
Yes, annually we get about $364,000 for the to offset policing costs from the province, and we are welcome to use that money for this board if we would like.
So are we talking about a couple cups of coffee here, or? I mean, we don't get per diems for in-town meetings, so would
No,
we
but
look
if-
for the community member at large, whoever we bring in, that it would just be a volunteer position on this board?
It all depends on how again, a lot of the work, the preliminary work that we did with this, we are now finding out some of the information that we were given is no longer correct or was incorrect in the first place. So I'm very reluctant.
It was
to
incorrect
say-
3 weeks ago, it's still incorrect, is what you're saying.
Well,
Okay.
I'm reluctant to say whether or not we have to have public on it or whatever, because, yeah, it's kind of been a little all over the board. So I think once we get the letter back from the minister that we can form our own board, if they allow us, then we will have fulsome discussions on to what we would like to see and what the province is saying we have to have for members on this committee.
So it is something for us to be thinking about, and like how we would see this set up. I mean, I'm definitely not against an informal committee, and neither where representation from the county Minburn and the town of Mundare, even parts of the county of Lamont or something, where we could sit down and have a conversation with this detachment about what we're seeing, trends or and stuff. I mean, to me, that would be effective committee work.
Yes.
Good governance,
Under our
really,
own board.
but not recognized.
No,
We
can't
all
be.
wear hats, it's like,
But if they approve it, then we would be a recognized board.
Yes.
if we, just the town of Vegreville,
Yes.
it would be,
But I'm sure that we could, even if it has to be informally, bring information from our neighbors forward that our detachment and its area covers. Because once again, the RCMP boundaries are a little different than the province's governing boundaries as well, too.
Because our recognized board can still host activities, and one of those activities can be informal conversations. It'll only be that apparently we're the only ones that get to bring it forward, if we're recognized.
okay. Councillor Barry.
Yes, thank you. I was going to suggest the same thing, is that we can have our official board, but you can bring advisors in from different areas so that you understand the broader picture. And, you know, and so that you could have a little bit of both. You can have your official board, and then you can have your broader area that's not recognized.
Go ahead, Councillor Curtis.
I guess too, thank you, is the frequency, is this something we can do quarterly? Does it need to be monthly? Is it,
We set that through bylaw, right?
but I wonder if they have any stipulations is all.
Through the bylaws where we would set the meeting times, and it can be quarterly as long as we are conducting business and need to meet for business.
So one thing I have not noticed about the whole process, and God knows it's boring to read, and none of it makes sense, and it changes. What is the mandate? Like, what are they, like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Just, we're trying to set regional directives for the RCMP, we're trying to come together and recognize what our biggest issues are, because in no place in all of what I've read is what the mandate actually is by doing this. I mean, I'd like to go into a meeting with a cause, like to go to a meeting without everybody knowing what they're up to, like what would be the best outcome, doesn't make sense. I mean, I think we could probably make some on our own. What are the RCMP? What do they think we're gonna accomplish? Like, we haven't heard nothing from them about what their input would be into this. Is their input just to sit and listen? Like, it doesn't explain none of this anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure in the conversations that I've had with the staff sergeant is they're unsure as well as to this is gonna be quite new to them as well. Again, from what I've read and everything, it's almost like putting a formal stamp on something municipalities do informally already. We speak with our detachment commander quite regularly, and the detachment's quite aware of what our community policing needs are, what council's wishes are for what council feels the top priorities that they should be working on. So I think this just puts a formal stamp on everything, because maybe not every community has the relationship that we have with our detachment, where we can have these conversations. So I'm a little
Yeah, well-
confused as well.
Well, I'm kind of hoping once, once this all gets set in place, then they'll give us some direction of what they're trying to accomplish by this, because, go ahead, Councilor Ridwell.
So this isn't a definite answer, because as we found out, things have changed constantly on it. But I had an opportunity to be involved in a bit of a conversation where there was some discussion about how we shifted to this point. So just I'll share what I was told at that point was, of course, originally the province was pushing quite a bit towards the discussion of provincial police force only. Of course, we know that multiple municipalities through Alberta Munis and others had, I would say it's fair to say, a lot of them pushed back against that premise. Now, the thing that the province had always been fighting with it was the fact that, of course, there is certain things that will never change regardless of whatever policing you have. There'll still be the federal criminal charges will always be the regulations they put, some of the bail stuff, it's always going to impact. But what they were talking about is because when they talked about switching over, they were saying because we're the ones who contract the services but have very little say in it. So in some of the shift, they were trying to find ways, while the push seems to be to not automatically switch out to the provincial, but was to be able to set some sort of specific mandate that could be handed forward then as a, we're your employer of service, and then here's the directives going. Now, I think Vegreville's far ahead of what other communities have, and I think what they were hoping for by having boards, because it is also hard if you had each community just talking to the board and say, we are talking about small places, and that's why they're looking at that regional approach. If you were to have, say, let's go Mundare, Andrew, Chipman, all have municipalities, but if three different municipalities were to give a different direction to what they wanted, what exactly would that one detachment servicing all three actually do? So I think that's where they were coming up with bigger areas. Now, to me, their areas don't match up because of the number of detachments that are in there. It still doesn't fully match. But I think that this is supposed to be very much like CEO Ling said, somewhat of a formal thing that they can bring forward as a little more of like, here's your marching orders from the province based upon these regions. How it's going to work, I don't know, but I would say that was the primary. And I do think Vegreville's far ahead of some of the conversations with other places, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, there's nothing for us to decide in this letter, other than, yes, we have no bananas.
Lord.
So let's just keep going forward. We won't know if we're winning until someone tells us what the rules are, but we'll see where we can get. Okay, and you have something, 11.2.
Yes, it's the annual pancake breakfast and safety meeting. Every year, we host a townwide safety meeting at a pancake breakfast and then we align it with the introduction of our summer students, so they get their full orientation on the first day. And so this year, we are looking at Monday, May the 5th, which Mondays are a little difficult sometimes, so I wanted to bring it forward and ask council if that would be a date that would work for the majority of them before we start getting too in-depth of planning, because we are also going to ask if council will come and help with breakfast.
So far, so good.
Well, it doesn't really matter as long as Director Lefebvre is available, because he does the pancakes.
There you go.
We could give him the expert over here, but.
But if nobody sees an issue with that date, then we'll go forward with our planning, and that will get.
Monday's a bad day for me. Any Monday.
Yeah, Yeah, it's not, like, we've done it before on a Thursday and everything like that. We've tried to accommodate, but we just, in order for the summer students to start, they have to have their orientation first. So this is the easiest way to do it. So we realize that the date's not gonna work for everybody, but, as much help as we could get, we would appreciate it.
Well, if it works for the administration and with the orientating the new employees, it's actually a highlight of our year for council to show up to these things like this. It's all good.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Then we will start our planning and we will send out a calendar invite.
Okay. Councilor Curtis, what have you been hearing in the community?
I had a resident reach out asking about what was going on with the rezoning. They had some questions and concerns, so I pointed them to the website and how they can reach out to admin with asking a question at the public hearing or putting in their concerns. So they were happy to get that information. And I think that's about all I had.
Excellent. Councilor Barry?
Actually, I can't say I've had anything other than just casual conversations, nothing that was really of any seriousness.
Right.
No semi-formal conversations.
No business casual conversation. Councilor Bullock?
Thank you. Actually, I just had one email contact this morning, and I forwarded that off to the CEO and the appropriate department, so they just get back to me an official answer. That would probably be best.
Hey, thank you.
That's it.
Councilor Roy?
I actually only had a call about the volunteer things, so that's the only one I had. But since we're on here, just given the timing, we've had several of our youth sports through hockey have some successful ends. So just reminding everybody of the upcoming U13 provincials. Come on down.
Excellent. So I was in a curling bonspiel in town on the weekend and come to find out that youth curling is a lot bigger than I thought in the community. At some of the practices and the youth curling days that they have here, all the sheets are full. So I was very surprised to hear that, which was very good news. When we were at Alberta Munis, the spring caucus, I had an email from a local citizen who works very hard with youth in our community with volleyball. And he was asking, do we have any volleyball equipment at the library gym? He was over there and he noticed there was plugs in the floor, screws that unscrew, and they need some poles. And so CEO Ling had the rec department go through everything at the library gym, and there's no equipment there. But he is also the president of VEG Senior Volleyball, or the recreation league here, and they just bought some new poles. So he's gonna see if those poles, the old poles fit in the gym floor. He's wondering if we'd be willing to buy a net, and he's having a really hard time finding gymnasium time for youth volleyball where he teaches. And there's a lot of youth in our community right now that are playing club volleyball in Edmonton. And, the ceiling is not super high in there, but he could still put up a ladder system and be hitting to them, and they can also practice hitting back, like setting and hitting. So he's wondering if we'd be something we'd be interested in. So I thought I'd bring it to council, and I didn't know there was a lack of gymnasium time that's available within the town right now, but I hope that both school boards recognize that we do have joint use agreements. But if there's a way that moving forward, if those poles will work and go into the holes in the floor, that we could maybe get a net. He's willing to build a platform to hit to the youth, and they can return that, and then. So if there's something that we could look at to purchase a net and maybe a few balls, and I don't know what, we'd have to talk to Manager Kuzmic about this, but what available nights may be down there, so that for maybe moving forward that we can get something set up for next year, that they could have a regular gym time or something like that. And that's about it. It was a good weekend at the curling rink. I don't know if you guys know, but the curling club is putting in a grant application to redo the kitchen and do some flooring and upgrade that facility a bit there, because it's always been a drawback there. But there was a few out of town teams. It was a lot of fun there. So, and there was not anything negative about the facility. The ice was very good. Our ice maker does a really good job. I mean, people from out of town love coming here because our ice is constant, same amount of curl. The speeds are always good. So if you're looking to find a good place to curl, like if you're competitive, this is a very good spot.
No negative ice.
No negative ice. And if you're not competitive, you can still have fun here. Okay, let's move on to the director highlights. And today we're going to start with Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Worship. This will be my recycling update. Q Films has provided us their draft, and that's the promotional company that come and did our recycling tour, and then some recycling operations inside after the tour is finished, some collection options, and we've just reviewed it today. Manager Jameson Brown and I have gone through it, as well as some of the other staff, and have some suggestions on how to change things around, what we'd like to see. That obviously there's a lot of footage they put into a 9-minute video, a little over 9, so there's some missing. We want to play with that. So hopefully within a week or so, we'll have a product out that we can release on our social media and get out to mayor and council as well to have a look. So far, I'm impressed. I like it. I think it's has a lot of good information in it, and something about having the drone footage that changes perspective to make things look a little different for sure. So we're happy with that. We are also have signed the agreement with Product Care. That's the Household Special Projects Agreement. That's more the pesticides and herbicides and different cleaners and things from household that would typically go at a household hazardous waste roundup, which it still will, but we can collect it throughout the year now and have a means of getting paid for the product per barrel when it leaves. So we've reviewed it, we've done some negotiating, we've signed it, sent it off, we're just waiting for them to sign it and bring it back, because their deadline is also April. And then circular materials is one we've been negotiating with for quite some time now, and we are getting closer. They've agreed to some of our conditions, that we were asking for some of the insurance requirements that were very difficult for us to get environmental protection insurance for curbside collection is not something we can do. If it was for the operations of the VMRF, that's something we can do. But so we managed to get rid of that, and just some small items, not even small. We've let them know that in order for us to sign, part of the funding model they're using is our budget, but what they were not going to consider was our capital purchases. So we need a truck to do curbside to pick up the household residential recycling. So they've agreed that the truck we're just getting in now, the cost of that truck amortized over 7 years, and that will be included in our revenue stream as well, because it's a part of doing business based on a percentage. So we're happy with that after a long negotiation process, we'll call it. So they have it now. They're making the adjustments to the agreement, send it back to us. We'll review, and if it's good, we will sign and be on board for April. So that is coming together.
Director Lefebvre, Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. I remember before there was some back and forth about weighing and the driving time too. How did that go in the negotiation?
They are now much more open to an averaging. We will do some weighing of product, also weighing in at the VMRF itself on a pallet scale is another option there they would agree to, and also average. And then also when our product goes in, we can do things like mark our bales, because remember, it's just residential paper plastic products. It's not all of it. So we can mark those, and when they get to our supplier in Edmonton or wholesaler, say Capital, for example, they send us an amount. So if we go to the mark, they can say we have this many bales coming at this weight, and now they're saying, yes, we'll accept that as well. So that's just going to simplify everything, get rid of all the extra mileage and diesel burning and the time, for sure. So yeah, we're happy with the progress we've made. Funny is you make it right at the very end before they have to sign the deadline.
And I guess with your conversations at meetings and with other municipalities that are trying to sign up with the same thing, we're all having the same problem, right? I mean,
we both have the same challenges. It's a little bit different. They're based off an Ontario platform, which is a mandatory requirement you participate, whereas in Alberta you can still opt in, opt out. So there was just differences because it needed to be more streamlined for what we do here. We're obviously not the only community that recycles and collects and ships like we are doing. So it's a stand together. By less than a month ago at a big meeting we had in Camrose with all of them that did presentation, there was a lot of municipalities that do what we do that had not signed up yet because it wasn't working for them either. So now we're all starting to make some headway, so that's a good thing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That was a nice little addition for the budget too, having that coming through, so,
Yes.
excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Director Cancun, I'm Saskew.
Thank you, Worship. I have just a couple quick updates. So I advertised the land leases that are coming up due on April 30th, 2025. So that's the end of 5-year agreements. I advertised these on the website, social media, and the newspaper with the assistance of the seed department because I did not actually do any of that. So thank you to that department.
You have it up there right now?
It is up there. So if you
Is that
search,
10 acres at the, behind the water fill? The old landfill, is it on there?
that one is not. We have the ones to the west of there by Alberta Innovates, but that one we don't. Do you want me to add that one too?
Well, at one time we removed it from that list so they could grow hemp there. And they don't grow hemp back to back, so the last couple of years they've grown different crops there. And I'm sure they sent us a check for less their cost of planting and stuff. I'm sure they have paid us. So we need to make a decision what we want to do with that land. Do we want to take that land and put it back into this pool? Or do we want to have,
Okay, we do have number 9 up. That is lease number 9. So
oh,
yes,
it
we
is
do
on
have
there
it.
now?
Yes.
Okay,
I was thinking the one on 75th Street, but no, that's part of number. Yeah, it is right there. Okay, yes.
so I guess I better let Alberta Innotech know not to seed it then.
Or we're gonna seed right on top of it.
Well, I was going to say, that is one of those handshake deals that we've
Yeah.
had. We don't actually have a formal lease on that. So that actually was one of my follow-up. What I was just about to say is that everyone that had a current lease with us, I've sent a letter, a written letter. So I've actually gotten a couple calls this week saying, I didn't realize my lease was up already. So I do send out courtesy letters as well to everyone that has an existing lease with us. So do you want me to send, if you give me contact info, I can send that canned letter to them as well?
Dr. Jan Selesky.
Okay, to Dr. Yan.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
I just have a question about our land leases. I heard something, whether it was a rumor or not, whatever, when we lease out the property to whoever, they don't have the capability to release it to somebody else, do they?
There should be no subleases, no. We do have formal lease documents, so if there is anything like that that you know of, please let me know. There is it's a 10-page lease document that they sign.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks.
10-page,
It's quite long.
red tape reduction, let's get her down to 7.
It might be 7, I'm just guessing. So continuing on with that, so the due date for submission for current year is April 15th, 2025, and the leases will take effect on May 1st of 2025. And for all of these sections, we do charge property taxes separate in addition to what the lease amount is. I also continue to work with Wild and Company on the 2024 audit. We expect to have these documents ready to be presented to council at the upcoming legislative and council meetings in April. So given said that, our auditor Carla will not be in attendance for the formal meeting as I'm expecting her to have her baby before then, so
April 4th, I hear.
yes. That's her due date, so you never know. But we do thank her for her ongoing commitment. She is working very
Auditors, they're very on the time. They're
Yeah.
August the 4th. I mean, April the 4th.
And then I've also received the assessment from the assessor. I'm working on putting together documents to compile the 2025 property tax bylaws. So we have the assessment in from our assessors, plus the provincial assessors, plus the linear designated industrial properties. So we have 3 different assessments that we have to input into our system and then balance. And then from there, I start calculating the bylaws. So it is in progress. Our tax clerk was away today with the plague that is going around town. And so we expect to have the final adjustments in tomorrow for a couple of follow-up items we had. So in the next coming weeks, expect a property tax bylaw draft to be coming through, and plans for notice of assessments to go out in early May 2025. So the official date, I don't know yet. I have to look. There's a little chart where you make sure that the date that they're mailed and then the assessment date isn't on a weekend and not on a long weekend. So you have to have so many statutory days, like 7 days it's considered received even if it is mailed. And so there's that whole process that I have to do yet, and that will be coming shortly. And then other highlights of this period include completion of 2025 grant reconciliation and submission of projects to the federal and provincial portals. So this ensures timely payment of our grant funds for 2025. So if we submit the projects, we get the funding paid out in the spring. If we don't submit projects, it's December and we still don't have 2025 funding. So that has been what has been across my desk lately.
So our assessment is just about done. And we noticed that the school tax from the province is in. And their assessment is, res is up 10% and non-res is up 11.
Yes, and unfortunately, we have no control over what they've assessed it. I did a quick calculation with the updated and statement of intent that came through my portal yesterday, and I calculated approximately an additional $164,000 being levied for requisitions for this year. We did pay a requisition. It is due March 30th. It's coming out of our bank account, and then we also have to do the Catholic one separate, so we've remitted that just this week as I'm away next week. And those were based on last year. So we will have to do a little bit bigger payments for the remainder of the year because it was based on the $407,000 from our last year payments. And then now with this one, it's an additional 164 overall. So not every quarter, but overall.
So if our assessor, which is approved by the province, and when we get our overall assessment in and we've only gone up 6%, maybe we should hire the province to start doing our assessment. Because they seem to be able to have no problem getting it up 10%, 11% in the two different codes. So it's a little strange.
Yes, and our assessors we have come to the end of our term with our assessors, so we will be reevaluating in the spring and possibly doing a request for proposal for other local assessors available in our area, just to ensure that we are getting good dollar value for what we have, just as a fiduciary duty to our ratepayers.
Would we not even pay a little more for an assessor that could see that a house value in 20 years would move? I mean, I'm not trying to be ignorant here, but they have done a very terrible job.
Yes, I've been working with them. I haven't, like I said, until I get this property tax bylaw drafted and the numbers drafted, I'm going to do a deep dive because there was significant work that they did this year, and I am happy with some of the changes they made, but definitely looking through the roll, the ones that I told them to focus on, they updated, but the ones that still needed to be updated were only up, I think, 1 or 2%. So there is certain areas of our assessments that definitely could have been increased in comparison. So I'm really interested to see where that lands with tax bills. I tend to sample ours, and then we have all different ranges of houses, and we can get a pretty good indication of where the tax bill and where the tax burden will lie. So I am interested. That is my next 2 weeks project, is to figure out exactly based on this assessment where we're sitting, and I will definitely have better comments as to where we are after the fact of those calcs. And like even looking at residential versus non-residential. So if he brought up res a whole bunch, but then kept non-residential similar with our split, then would more of the tax burden gone on to residential? So those are all problems and questions that I cannot answer until I do a deep dive and look at actual the mill rates that I calculate, and then do a deep dive into sample calculations of everybody's taxes.
Go ahead, Councilor Rowe.
Certainly I don't expect an answer till you've had a chance to look at that. But it's actually an interesting point that you make there. I mean, what will be no, I mean, I'm not even gonna mince words. It literally must be adjusted, or I have no interest in hearing anything from them, because there's literally two ways to do this adjustment. We're taking it every time from other municipalities. They're going, why aren't you just dealing with your adjuster? And no more. This is ridiculous. They need to start looking at two sides. One side, they need to go through the adjustments, but the other side, they need to put their brains in their heads again and recognize the fact that the province doesn't go through and pick areas. They literally do it as an overall assessment. There's not a reason in this world that this adjuster could not have turned around and put 10% or 6% or whatever the number across the board, then gone back in and do the job they should have been doing for multiple years, which is fixing them. Fixing one here and one there isn't going to help our problem, which is we're multiple percent under. So again, this isn't at you, because this has nothing to do with you. Having said that, my recommendation is I would need to see magic before I would ever support one thing to come from them, when they've literally put every member of council at every meeting we go to, at every business thing we go to, taking it.
Absolutely.
So they better excite us.
Well, a 1% increase on certain residential parts of town, and the province feels it's 10%. And again, after 20 years of some houses' assessment not moving $1. And people need to understand, it's not like your taxes are gonna go up, our mill rate goes down, we still gotta collect the same amount. But that assessment is what's tied to the mill rate, which we always get drug over the coals at. And again, if the province sees a 10% increase in assessment, and the taxpayers in this town are gonna pay 10% more on their property tax, for the school allocation, which we have no control over, and our assessor is, well, we'll get there, Director Saskew will.
They're handcuffing us, because the problem is we can't actually drop our mill rate, just because if they would just blanketly give us a percentage across, we can adjust the mill rate accordingly, because we still have to take certain dollars in, and then we could fix the problem. But if they aren't willing to do a blanket assessment across and they fix a couple here or there, we aren't gonna be able to adjust the mill rate unless they've done a good chunk of them, because we won't be able to, we still have to collect a certain tax dollar.
And to be fair, I had almost the exact conversation with them, and they said, well, I actually gave them our last highest assessment before the decreases that Vegreville saw was in 2016. And I had recommended, I'm like, let's start with a basis of 2016 assessment plus 5%. Sandra and I had been speaking about that as being reasonable values based on sales that we know of. So I actually prepared them a spreadsheet and I sent it to them. And he's like, well, I did an adjustment similar to that, and I kind of did you do an early submission and then it gives back like errors and alarm bells and stuff. And he says, it's giving me big alarm bells right now. And I said, well, you can either do it without alarm bells, because obviously it is going to give alarm bells because this is a big significant adjustment, but you guys are catching up on errors. And obviously with our previous assessor passing away and being ill, like we did get put on the wayside. Like they definitely agree. And we all know that there were certain things where it's just like, we're not top of mind. It was just, let's just get through this survival mode. So I said, let's try 2016 value, and 5% is all very reasonable calculations based on actual sales that I know. And so he said, I got alarm bells, I can't do it. And I said, well, if you can't do it, the next assessor is going to get the alarm bells, and he's going to say, the prior assessors had one pass away and they had all these things happen, and this is why there's alarm bells, because we're doing a catch-up year. So I said, you can either submit the alarm bells and have a chance at remaining our assessors, or you can make it so that there are no alarm bells, adjust the actuals, chasing the sale as they call it, where they only adjust up for actual sales or listings in the year, and then we'll be looking for new assessors. So I will say that pushback, they did a very good job at making some of the changes. I definitely like looking at the comparison. It's definitely not similar, like it's comparable to my 2016, but it's not as high of an increase in some spots. So it'll be very interesting to see when I be able to actually calculate the mill rate and see where we landed. But I am optimistic that it will be better. So that's all I can say right now.
That's okay. It'll be better, or they just can clear the desk. So that's it.
There's not one piece of property in this
No.
community that is worth less than it was in 2016.
Yeah. every single piece of property in this community should be a minimum of 5% higher, plus the catch-up of the adjustments. Minimum.
Anyway, we,
It's
if
infuriating.
we're frustrated, I can imagine how you must feel with this.
Yes.
But, okay, thank you very much. Now, the CAO highlights. That was all you had, Director Saskey?
That is all I had.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a hard act to follow, isn't it? Well, fortunately, I attended the AB Muni Spring Leaders Caucus with council, so you all know where I was the following weeks, or the prior weeks, so the highlights are a little short this time. I also attended the Alberta Health Engagement Session with members of council on March 7th. And this week, we conducted interviews for, the legislative administrator and I conducted interviews for the legislative assistant. And other than that, it's the regular daily duties.
Okay. Thank you. So, March the 19th, we're having supper with Elk Island Catholic School? And where are we having that at?
It's at Crave.
Okay.
Yes.
And we have our public hearing here on the 24th and the council meeting to follow. And a few of us are doing a pickup on April the 4th. Let's not get too far ahead. Okay, is there any other business of council? Anything I missed? Okay. We do have a couple items in closed session, so I would take a motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Councillor Curtis, and that was at 5:08. All those in favor? Carried.